And this, as we had some comments there from our resident analyst here, Peter Kagwanja, that this is tantamount, or this is actually sort of an espionage, so to speak, and that is treasonable, according to him. But we want just to throw this to our panelists this morning and just see where did they err as far as this is concerned. Did they get the necessary clearance according to the standing orders that the Speaker was saying there? And we have our panelists already. We ran by you their profiles. They're already here. Let's hear from Hashi. Just begin with you.
Well, I think our colleague, who is unfortunately not here, Mr. Peter Kagwanja.
Peter Kagwanja was last night on Sidebar.
Yes, I think he just ate too much ngwashe. Didn't really give us a proper analysis of that situation. I mean, the language of being fastidious, the ability to look into details that are really not there, obfuscates the sense or the facts of the matter. And Dr.Ali, just like that old detective story, someone just says, just the facts, ma'am. And we just saw the Speaker of the National Assembly say that those members of Parliament asked for permission, and he gave it to them. Members of Parliament are sovereign persons. This is the National Assembly. The second thing is, Dr.Ali, I heard about the Foreign Office. They should have informed the Foreign Office. There's no protocol for this. I was there, I worked there, I know. There's no protocol, there's no piece of paper that says this is what you need to do. And another thing, Dr.Ali, we have a separation of powers in this country. We have the executive, we have the National Assembly, and we have the judiciary. It is the Foreign Office that's supposed to report to Parliament. It's not Parliament that wants to report to the Foreign Office. It's a no-no. Parliament is a reporting institution. They don't need to go to the but of course, Dr.Ali, when it comes to wisdom and sagacity, I think these MPs, are quite foolish, in my opinion. They acted in a very foolish way. I think that they should have covered all their bases. They should have spoken even to the security officials, even if they did not need to speak to them. They obviously know that Kenya and Somalia have a huge problem diplomatically. We have a conflict. Dr.Ali, yesterday the Somali federal government and the clan militias were fighting inside Kenya's territory. I mean, so we have a lot of, in Mandera, so we have a lot of problems. But I think this being fastidious about these MPs and trying to make an issue out of it, harks back to that old shifter mentality, Dr.Ali. Here in Western Kenya, the Bukusus cross and go and eat ugali with their friends over there. Here in Masai land, where I'm from, they cross to go to Arusha to go and eat meat to them. The Mustafa and his Kales can go across there and do a marathon in Uganda. You have seen Dr. William Ruto campaign with Mr. Museveni in Uganda. You have seen Raila Odinga go to the Acholis in northern Kenya to go and campaign with the Endalangi. And this kind of all sentiment, Dr.Ali, is this tribal discourses that is all over the region, I think is probably the problem. I also think that the Somali MPs are wrong to go to Farmajo, because what's Farmajo going to do about security in northern Kenya? Nothing. He cannot maintain his own security in his own country. He's Shabab been there, and he's been there for the last 5 years. He's done nothing about them. Mogadishu, the explosions are there every day. So, Dr.Ali, I don't see the policy point of going to see Mr. Farmajo about security in northern Kenya. Security in northern Kenya is in the hands of the people of northern Kenya. And when they decide that that security is going to be there, it will be there. And the security forces in Kenya need to buttress that, and the intelligence needs to buttress that. We need a Kenyan solution to the issues of northern Kenya. However, they're interlinked. And because there is no state in Somalia, and because we're going to suffer this problem, I've heard members from the political class say that the buffer zone is failing in Somalia. That's just clan politics, Dr.Ali. The buffer in there is working. It's not working very well, but it's working. And of course, it's stopping a lot of terrorists and a lot of problems from spilling over. But we have to really reassess. We all in this panel and in this government, we really have to reassess our Somali policy. It's a complete overhaul of this policy. The first question we have to ask is, Are we state building? Are we peacekeeping? What's our exit strategy? Or is there mission creep now in Somalia? How are boys and and girls in the armed forces? Are we going to just keep on leaving them there to die? What was our policy in the original place, and what's happening after 10 years? Is Mr. Madobe in Jubaland delivering to us on security? I mean, there needs to be a complete rethink and a complete overhaul on how we deal with security and how we deal with these issues in Somalia. And I think this MPs thing is just a storm in a teacup, and they shouldn't have sent soldiers and askaris to the airport to go and deal with the MPs. I mean, this is pathetic.
Right. So, Dr. Mustafa, was there a violation of the standing orders?
But let me speak to this from a conflict resolution point of view and perhaps national security, then talk about the violation. Dibal, the context is such that there is trouble in Somalia. And so what is happening inside Somalia today, first of all, is sad. Instead of the Somali federal government fighting Al-Shabaab, now they are fighting other states and leaving Al-Shabaab to proliferate. Now, the current conflict between Kenya and Somalia is quite sensitive. And for the Somali MPs to actually go to Mogadishu, as Hashi has said, was not wise. They should have looked at various considerations before going there. Kenya is in conflict with Somalia, actually, with regard to this is the maritime challenge. There are issues between Nairobi and Mogadishu that need to be resettled, and there are border issues. In terms of the structure, there is what is called the joint border commissions. Now, so there are structures to deal with those issues, and some of those elected leaders actually sit on those commissions. So that's where they should be resolving this problem from, Dibal. In terms of the MPs are state officers. And so it's very important that MPs as state officers actually inform and engage the various organs in the government. Not necessarily to get permission, Dibal, but they need to know what they're going to do. Otherwise, what were they going to do in Mogadishu? In conflict resolution, Dibal, even if we are talking about establishing back-channel communications, maybe that's what they want to do, and it's okay to establish back-channel communications, but state officers do not participate in this kind of back-channel communications. Ambassador Mwencha will tell you that when there is open conflict, sometimes you actually engage in some kind of back-channel communication, including with elders, religious leaders, in order to try and plead with the other parties. Now, the MPs that went to Mogadishu are state officers. If there's anything that they're going to vote in Parliament with regard to Somalia, they will have to vote on the side of Kenya because they are Kenyans and they've sworn to their allegiance, patriotism, and to protect the sovereignty of Kenya, Dibal. So it's a rather murky field that these MPs have gotten themselves into. And when you then go into such a country without engaging with various agencies in the country, they'll start asking questions because questions are being asked. Now, if it's about meeting intelligence, if at all they met the intelligence chief in Mogadishu, and I'm saying if, you know, the work of intelligence is so critical, is so sensitive, and it is the work of the intelligence, their counterparts here, to meet their counterparts in Mogadishu, not the members of parliament, Dibal. And so these are issues that will really need to be clarified. There are many conflicts between Kenya and its borders. We've seen that in Tanzania, Ethiopia, and some of those joint border commissions actually do work, Dibal. Finally, my final point, Al-Shabaab has increasingly become a homegrown problem. Has increasingly become a homegrown problem. Yes, yes. And we have Kenyan Al-Shabaab. some of this stuff, a part of it, we need to address it locally. The answer to Al-Shabaab is not only just in Mogadishu. And so the leaders in Northeastern, particularly the members of parliament, the politicians and religious leaders, will need to work very closely with the Kenyan government officials in order to deal with the Al-Shabaab problems. You can see how, for example, and I give an example of cattle rustling, how government officials are working with local leaders. Sometimes they're problematic. There are others who are very good and are working very closely with government, like Governor Lonyangapuo, and they are dealing with this issue of cattle rustling. In northeastern Kenya, the challenges that are affecting the people there, the communities there with regard to terrorism are going to be dealt with effectively when there is proper working relationship between Kenyan government officials, the leaders in Northeastern, religious leaders and elders in Northeastern. Anything that is coming out of Somalia, that's between the states and they have to deal with it. They will have to deal with Al-Shabaab. But Dibal, it's a sad day for the region that the Somali National Army is fighting the armies of member states instead of fighting Al-Shabaab.
I agree with that.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Khanenje. And we need also to focus, when it is Mogadishu and maybe Jubaland, we've known also there's some MPs who visited Jubaland, and we've never had these reactions that we've had, and Ethiopia, and we've never had these reactions that we're seeing right now also from government as it is. Did they went through the back channels? Right? What were they discussing? Is it issues to do with national security? So why are we, in a sense, seeing a selective reaction, so to speak?
You know, first of all, Dibal, the MPs' perhaps intentions might have been good, but the action was ill-advised. Now, it is important for us to understand the context under which this is happening. Number one, increasingly, the government in Mogadishu has been extremely hostile to Kenya. From their statements, including recently their UN ambassador calling Kenya a destabilizing force, you know, in Somalia. You know, those are serious indictments, you know, of a neighboring country. Now, there are not two countries in the region that are so connected culturally, you know, socially, religiously, name it, like Kenya and Somalia. These are brotherly countries. However, Mogadishu has not been treating Kenya as such, and a lot of it actually has to do with an attempt to externalize problems, you know, from Somalia. Facing an election that is coming up, part of it, you know, this year and then early next year, it is convenient to try and create an enemy. Now, unfortunately, that enemy is happening to be Kenya, to try and mobilize, you know, and whip up the public sentiment. But this is extremely serious for us, in part because Kenya moved into Somalia not because they wanted to occupy Somalia. And I think it's important for the public to understand we don't hold brief for government here. You know, we're simply trying to make analysis objectively as citizens who love this country and who love this region. And to the extent that right now the government in Mogadishu is training its arms on its own against the states. It's an action that has been condemned by the United Nations Security Council about a week and a half ago, actually, I think on the 24th. So it's not just something Kenya is complaining about. It is something that can threaten to get out of hand. Now, with regard to our members of parliament going to Somalia, as perhaps as a back channel, you see, any fundamental change with regard to relations or national security cannot be done between a section of population and another country. These are national issue. And so whatever agreement that can be reached there can never be implemented if the national government actually is not privy to it. And that is why, even though whether the standing orders or whatever might not really allow, rather force you to do, to consult or to seek permission, it's just a matter of wisdom to do that. Now, when was the last time, for instance, American congressmen never visited this country or anywhere in the world without the knowledge of their government? Number two, if anything were to happen to those MPs, those are our citizens. The government has an obligation to protect them. But if you're not aware, how are you going to actually even do that? Because let's say they go there and wherever chopper they're in is, is shut down or whatever it is. We have an obligation to protect them and to make sure we're going to secure them. How are we going to do that when we are not even aware of what is happening? Number three, in an environment of apparent hostility, I think it's very, very important that every citizen tries to consult widely before they actually engage in something. And of course, some of us have been discussing about the importance of track 1 and track 2 diplomacy and track 2.5, these back channels, because sometimes those are more effective. However, there has to be a format and a formula of doing that, because any time citizens try to go it alone in doing things, they may actually be playing in the hands, and especially right now, what sometimes we see as exporting the clan dynamics from Somalia to Kenya, and using that to fan emotions, and we stop actually thinking rationally at that point. That is not going to help us in fighting terror or in trying to bring about regional peace and security.
All right. Let's hear from Erastus Manja.
Dibal, we are dealing with a very delicate situation. And in this situation, our words must be measured and our thoughts must also be calculated. There are 3 or 4 fundamental issues that we're dealing with here. But first of all, the environment. And I think Hashi brought out a very important point, that we have our boys and girls, young men and women who are in Somalia with a mission to for peace building or peacekeeping, but also we need to develop a strategy on how to stabilize Somalia and come out. The environment we are is getting very toxic. And I think the first thing that we should do, and this is a call to IGAD and AU, that we must do everything possible to de-escalate this. Unfortunately, there is a regional context to what is happening, because it's no secret that the regional powers, particularly those in Somalia, have not been reading from the same script. And so we need to be very careful. And of course, there is also now the local dynamism. There is no doubt that if you look at what is happening in northeastern Kenya, schools are not operating properly, teachers have run away, and so the population is bound to be thinking about how do they get out of this quagmire. And in finding a solution, we can stumble. I think what Mustafa brought out very early on to say, you normally establish back channels. I listened to one of the MPs saying they have a message for the president from Somalia. I mean, this is not how you do your back channels. This is not how you do it. It is not through megaphone. Using megaphone diplomacy is precisely the wrong thing. And you're putting the president in a very awkward situation, because in effect you are saying our foreign policy has failed. You are saying that our state is not capable of doing this. And so that is a very, 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 very delicate situation. As we move forward, and I think to us, I think what is important is not so much to analyze the dangers and what have you, but how do we go forward? I think we need to get our National Assembly to step in and rein in both the executive, the legislature, and so that we can have a coherent policy. Because it is clear that from this kind of action, is a lack of coherence policy. And therefore the population is bound to think of, okay, all acting in dissonance. The second one is, first of all, to bring in the region and really say, is the focus on the mission in Somalia working? You saw the other day, US signed an agreement with Alban. Why did the US do that? After 17 years of war, spending billions of dollars, in fact trillions, and losing so much personnel, US was not going anywhere. We have an asymmetrical war in Somalia, and winning an asymmetrical war is never easy. And there are disagreements. Do we talk to Al-Shabaab? That has never been cleared. But you see now the US is talking to them. And this is the kind of situation you have. We have also a problem in the sense that in Somalia, we have now developed a 2-track challenge. So Jubaland and Mogadishu, we don't seem to have the same policy in the two. That is a challenge, because then Mogadishu, particularly facing an election, will use this to create an external enemy, and that can become very problematic. So in effect, what we need now is let's de-escalate, let's have a coherence policy, let us have regional dimension to it, so that we can all talk from one script. Let us stabilize the region. Otherwise, we'll be in a long-drawn war, which will be very costly to us.
Right. Professor Naomi Damba.
Dubal, I agree with what has been said by my colleagues here. Let me take a global historical dimension to this situation. And I like what Hashi, the issues that Hashi raised, and most of you have raised those issues. There is nothing absolutely wrong with what this group of legislators do. If you look at historical development, foreign policy, wartime, and everything. The situation in Somalia called for use of every possible source that we can master within our means. First, to communicate directly with the president of Somalia about our intention. And secondly, is to gauge the temperature in Somalia such that we can prepare ourselves. Dubal, I'm not sure that these legislators just picked up and took a plane and went there without someone in the government knowing. And so that has to be established. Nevertheless, when you look at Vietnam and then you look at Afghanistan, that the ambassador is talking about right now, Colin Powell, and it's go back as old as Sun Tzu, stated very clearly, and what is now known as Colin Powell doctrine, is that you use all diplomatic channels, back channel, front channel, whichever way you want, and don't go to war. And if you decide to go to war, seek popular support for what you want to do, be very clear about your objective. Two, use overwhelming force to achieve whatever you are going to do. And lastly, have a very clear exit strategy. This is what we've been talking about for quite a while right now. Kenya must have an exit strategy out of the situation that we are now bogged in. And Kenya can have a tactical retreat to our border, to buffer our border, and have an agreement with the government of Somalia that within 25-mile parallel or 50-mile parallel, no war zone, no military of any kind, and that Kenya will react to defend itself. There should not be a war in Wajir, in Mandera, when our soldiers are there for peaceful reason. We have a situation that is dealing with our border, and then we have now the ocean. So the point is keeping this friendly zone on our border is nice, but we are not there for peacekeeping because that was not the original purpose went there. It is time that Kenya move back tactically to our border, to protect our border and have a very clear policy dealing with Somalia. Otherwise, we are in a quagmire, and there are hundreds, thousands of unemployed young people in this country that would like to go and fight for something. We know they're being recruited. We also have an information right now that the Chamber of Commerce in Somalia have Al-Shabaab members. We are also aware that the Somali intelligence community include former Al-Shabaab members. So is there a potential collision or realignment between Al-Shabaab and the national government of Somalia, where Kenya become an enemy? Now, this is a major potential war that will destabilize this country the way we know.